Hello, heathens, and welcome to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your evergreen host, Megan Angus. And this week we are going to be looking at the astrology, the astronomy, the heliacal fixed star risings, the folk holidays, holy days, and religious festivals of Samhain/Yule season, waxing moon in Pisces, lunar week 42. That's a lot, right? Well, that's kind of what we do here on the podcast. We do a lot. If you love this podcast, let's start out with an ad. If you love this podcast, you can support me through my Patreon. Side note, Anchor, the group that I put this podcast out through, uses a payment system called Stripe, and Stripe doesn't really acknowledge quote-unquote fortune tellers. My information is attached to that description, and so I cannot add ads to this podcast to make money off of it. I'm now hitting about 100 listeners per episode, and I don't get anything from your clicks. So if you hear ads with this podcast, by the way, I'm not doing that, and I'm not making any money off of it. I have also, side note, never really wanted to add ads to the podcast. So if you love this, throw a tip in my tip jar, please. Sign up for my Patreon. You can sign up for $1 a month or more and get wild, fabulous prizes. Seriously, I'll change your life. Honest to God. Anyways, thank you to all of the people who do support me, who do tip me every week and every month. I so freaking appreciate it. My landlord appreciates it when I pay my rent every month. It's pretty dope. And if you don't have the financial means to support, which, hello, it's 2021. I get it. Tell a friend, share this on social media, give it a thumbs up, give it a review on whatever podcast service you listen to this through, because all of the algorithms really love that stuff. And, I'm hustling out here. I'm trying to make it work. Okay. We're moving on. Also, I have said this last couple of weeks, it's still true. I am going to be announcing more workshops in the coming year, including tarot, including witchcraft, and of course, more Wheel of the Year classes. Speaking of which, our next Wheel of the Year class is December 16th. That is next Thursday or next Thursday, depending on when you're listening to this. It will start at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It will be live and completely free to access through my YouTube channel. You'll also be able to watch it through my website, meganangus.com. We will be talking about Yule, past and present, for about 2 hours. Going to go over the astrology, the astronomy, all the stuff, right? Witchcraft and spellcrafting and the pagan arc of the goddess and the god through this portion of the wheel and all of that good stuff. Join me and the freaks that arrive in the chat December 16th. Okay. That is enough of that. Let's move on with the actual work of this week. Okay? Okay, before we get into the goods of each day, let me orient us on the wheel. For all of Samhain season, our witches' work has been life, death, rebirth, working with fate, working with the ancestors, right? We're doing a lot of divination in this system, in this season. And all of that stuff stays true as we move into these final days of Samhain season and the final days of fall, and creep up on winter solstice and Capricorn season and the beginning of winter season. We are still working with life, death, rebirth imagery. We're still working with divination. We're still working with ancestors, maybe more so than ever before during this time of the year. That's really all that I'm going to say about that, because we're going to get way, way more into it in the Yule class. So we'll save it for that. Okay. This week starts on December 10th with a waxing half moon or waxing quarter moon, depending on what terminology you like to use, at, more importantly, 19 degrees of Pisces. It will be exact at 5:35 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else, / the next day for some folks around the world. So what are we doing with this moon? Okay. Well, last week we had a lot of lunar work that we needed to do around power and power structures in terms of, what have we learned about those things? Who did we learn them from? What were the systems that were there? What were the ancestral ties to that stuff? And where has that helped shape us? And where has that shaped us in kind of weird ways or warped ways? And so now we're coming into this Pisces moon, and this Pisces moon kind of pulls us away from that work in terms of like thinking about ourselves and that work. And now we are kind of turning towards witnessing the urge to sacrifice and give our energy and resources over to something, usually bigger than us or seemingly more in need of us, past the point of inconvenience, right? Like beyond what is necessary, beyond what is like appropriate, maybe for you. There's, something to be said, right? For like, if you're really sacrificing something, but also, come on, that gets weird quick, right? Okay. So on this moon, we really want to watch ourselves here. We don't want to necessarily we don't necessarily want to do that, right? And if we are feeling urges around this, we want to kind of watch ourselves, right? Like, are we leaning into the, sort of like, no, I'm holding back on that. I'm not going to give anything. I'm not going to share anything. I'm always going to be able to like justify my unwillingness to give or to share? Or do we lean too far into the urge and we can't like figure out where our boundaries are, and we can't figure out like where we're supposed to stop giving? So this moon is really kind of focusing on all of that type of stuff. And, that's a lot of what we're doing here. And that's important work because next year there is going to be some pretty big astrology in Pisces. So like pretty big astrology in Pisces. So this moment with this Pisces moon and all of our Pisces moons that we are working with up to, sort of spring-ish of next year, may be like little glimpses into our tendencies and our unconscious desires and opinions and stuff around the ideas of sacrifice and martyrdom and, giving past the point of what is appropriate. And, where do we go to extremes in those senses? Where are our boundaries, and where do our boundaries sort of dissolve in that stuff? It's going to be a lot. 2022, guys, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be great. Don't worry about it. It's going to be super great. Okay. While we are working with this waxing moon in Pisces, our lunar body work that we are doing is we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and nourishing for action the legs, especially the ankles and the feet. As I say every week here, not a doctor of medicine, doctor of the cosmos and the stars. So if you are wanting to integrate any of my information about lunar work and rhythms and physical healthcare, check in with your trusted healthcare provider and get their opinion first, because I'm just some wacky lady on the internet yelling at you. Okay. For our plant body work, we are planting, transplanting, and grafting. There is no astrology of note for this day. I guess I could mention, never mind. It's fine. not enough of a big deal. And so the only other thing that's happening on this day, we have no holy days running other than like the big festivals that we talked about last week and the week before that are running for, multiple weeks up to a month, things like Advent, etc. We have no single day festivals or holy days for December 10th, but we do have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Sabik. And this is the knee of Ophiuchus or Ophiuchus. I say it probably incorrectly, whatever, I don't care. That's it. That's literally all I have to say about that fixed star. It's the knee of that constellation. Pretty exciting. But hey, the moon is, focused on legs and legs. All right, whatever. Let's move on to December 11th. All right, that brings us to December 11th, and our waxing moon scooches right out of Pisces and heads on into Aries. So what are we doing with this moon? After those couple of days with the moon hanging out in Pisces last week and this week, now we get to hang out with our anger. Huh? Yeah, I know. I wasn't really excited about it either, but here we are. What are you going to do? As I always say, right? In whatever ways are healthy for you, I encourage you to take some time to get in touch with whatever you are fucking pissed off about, okay? The people, the institutions, the world, the gods, whatever, right? This is a fantastic moon to take a minute to get in touch with that stuff. And really what this is about is hitting the pressure valve and letting some of the steam out before the pressure builds up too much, because there's a lot of things in the world to be mad about right now. Okay, so this is a moment, in whatever way, as I like to say, right, in whatever way feels healthy and safe for you, to allow yourself to come into presence with the stuff that you are really frickin' angry about, and let some of that stuff speak. We don't want it to take over. We don't want it to take control in that moment or at any other time, right? We want to always acknowledge our anger. We want it to feel heard in us, right? I'm angry. Okay, I'm listening. There's parts of me that are angry. We don't want to squelch it. We don't want to stuff it down. We also don't want it to run the show. And if we don't pay attention to our anger long enough, it will run the show, right? Either from the shadows in some spooky, funky, subterranean way where we become really manipulative with people or whatever the deal is, right? Or it rules from directly and we're just like an outright asshole. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. I don't know. But this moon is really saying like, hey, in whatever way is cool for you to do it, like come into the room with your anger and let that stuff speak for a while. Before it explodes, right? Or whatever. Like, and as I also always say, you are always allowed to put yourself in time out. So December 11th, December 12th, December 13th, I think as well. The moon is hanging out in Aries. We'll talk about that obviously as we get through the podcast, but we've got a few days of this is my point. And so on day one, you might be like, oh yeah, I'm dealing with my anger. Like I'm super in touch. Wow, I'm fiery, spicy. Cool. Love it. And then the next day, like, we're at work and somebody moves our cup and we're like, because we're not actually present with what's going on. So just giving yourself that moment to be like, I am pissed off about stuff. I don't want this coming out where, at a person that doesn't deserve it or in a situation where it's not appropriate. I don't want it to rule me, right? Also, I want to let myself acknowledge what I'm freaking really, really mad about. Stuff I can control, stuff I can't control, all of the above. Okay. And you're always allowed to put yourself on timeout. So if you see yourself getting all fired up over something, especially something insignificant, walk around the block. Walk yourself outside. Go sit in your car. Go take a bus ride. Walk away. Take a breath. Hey, be an adult. All right. That's all. just parrot yourself in that moment. Okay. For our lunar body, we are awakening, activating, stimulating, adorning, and nourishing for action. Our head, our hair, our scalp, our brain, our eyes, and our sinuses. These are all portions of the body ruled by Aries. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting. We are checking out our plants for pests and disease as the weather continues to change. If you have land, we are perhaps plowing. We are definitely weeding, and we are pruning for above ground growth. So this is a great time to prune your plants if you want them to be nice and bushy, and get bigger. Okay. Moving on to the astrology of December 11th, we actually have 3 different transits on this day, so it gets a little puffy, a little heated, but we'll make it through. Okay, first off, we start the day with Venus conjunct Pluto in Capricorn at 25 degrees. Everybody calm down. It's going to be fine. But this is intense. Like, this day can just feel super intense. We might be really attracted to people who are intense, or situations that are really intense. The intense good, intense bad, intense happy, intense sad. But we may find ourselves like really attracting intense people and intense situations, or attracted to them. And this kind of stuff can, bring subconscious triggers and subconscious desires to the surface. Sometimes those are the same things. And it can be a day of getting a little manipulative with people, or finding yourself on the receiving end of some emotional manipulation. And again, a lot of this stuff is happening on the subterranean, subconscious levels, so we might not even realize that we are being emotionally manipulative, or we might not really realize at first that somebody is doing this to us, and it's only, a bit into the conversation that's like, wait a minute, this is really weird. So just be aware. Venus moves pretty quick. It's like a day-long transit, but all the same, just be present and be aware of yourself and what's going on around you and the people that are around you. Also on this day, we have Mercury in Sagittarius sextile Jupiter in Aquarius at 26 degrees. This is also going to be a super quick transit because Mercury is zipping through the sky at this point. And this is a lovely transit. We love this because it is helping us to really kind of come into union with the larger issues in our life and develop, or like kind of tap into a deeper understanding of the overall plans for the future. It is a great day for doing some future tripping in that regard. I would say alone, not necessarily with other people, unless you are with people that you really can trust and have an established friendship with them, or an established trust with them. But this is a really fantastic day for getting clear about what you want out of life. It's a really great day for studying any kind of stuff as well. Super fast transit, but all the same, supporting that kind of work. But then also on this day, we have the Sun in Sagittarius square Neptune in Pisces at 20 degrees. So how might that manifest for you? Well, it could manifest as a super low energy day. And that low energy feeling might be physically low energy, but you might feel like emotionally low energy or psychologically low energy. And that may read as like a bummer, or like, am I depressed today? Am I sad? Am I feeling down? It might feel like, oh, why would I try to bother to do this or that? Everything is futile. Everything is hopeless. I can't see the point in doing anything. And I just want to emphasize that that's very likely not the truth. And so really just anywhere where you find yourself thinking that thinking that way to yourself, say to yourself, no, this is just a low energy day. We're taking a day off. If it's at all possible for you to literally take the day off, I would encourage it, but that's not possible for everybody. And I totally get that. So in whatever way you can make your lunch the day ahead so you don't have to think about it on that day. Or lay out your clothes, right? Or like if there's any way possible to wake up 20 minutes early to give yourself just a little extra time to get to work, so that you can drag your feet a little, right? So that you can be lollygagging a little bit, right? And just really as much as you can to make room for yourself to just be a little slow on this day. Slow to react, slow to give a shit, perhaps. It could be a fantastical day for doing mystical work and spiritual studies and things like that. But I would encourage you, because it's a square between the sun and Neptune, in whatever kind of work if you are doing something like that, keep a foot on the ground, like stay grounded in some way. And remind yourself, like, I am studying fantastic ideas. I'm not necessarily studying things that are super realistic. And that's a good place. I'm escaping. I'm taking a little vacation from reality right now, but we will have to come back to reality at some point. That's a different thing. Okay. That's all of the astrology and the lunar stuff for December 10th. So let's now move to the holy days of December 11th. Sorry, December 11th. What day is it? All right, our holy days for December 11th. From our modern pagan calendars, particularly the Wheel of the Year calendars, we have the feast of the Celtic goddess Arianrhod, or Arianrhod. Now, side note, we've talked several times in the podcast throughout the year about the modern pagan Wheel of the Year calendars. They are something that have sprung up on the internet over the last 20 years, and they have a wide variety of information in them. Some of the dates are historically established, and some of them are modern recreation dates. Some of them are guesses, and some of it is wrong. They had good intentions, but they got the date wrong. Whatever. Point being, that this is a date that we see posited before winter solstice, on winter solstice, and after winter solstice. So I think more to the point is that the idea behind this holiday is that it happens somewhere around winter solstice. Okay, that being said, who is Arianrhod? This is a Celtic goddess of fertility, rebirth, and specifically weaving of cosmic time and fate. She oversees carrying the dead back and forth between the lands of the living, and her castle, which is Caer Shidi, which means the revolving castle. This place is up in the sky near the Northern Star, and specifically the constellation Corona Borealis. I have a lot of really cool stuff to say about this goddess, but I'm going to save it for the Yule class. Ha ha ha, you'll have to attend. But she's amazing, and the symbolism around her and the Wheel of the Year and her castle and time and space and all of that stuff is really, really cool stuff. So, Feast of Arianrhod on this day. Also on this day, from our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Poseidia, or Poseidia, Poseidia, I'm sure. This is a festival in honor of the god Poseidon, who gives his name to this month. And some scholars assume that it is because the Aegean Sea is super turbulent during the month of December. And so they are thinking is that ancient Greeks sort of gave this month the name of Poseidon as a means of like a tribute to him to get him to calm down. It's fair. Also on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Tiberinus. This is the river god Tiber, or Tiberinus. And that's really all I have about this. There's another day or two more days dedicated to him throughout the year. I think what's more important here is that we have a tie to water god. But there is some interesting things with the god Tiber. The river itself is who was responsible for carrying Romulus and Remus to the place where eventually Rome was founded. That's pretty much all I got for that. All right, let's move on to December 12th. All right, December 12th, and we still have our waxing moon hanging out in Aries, so we are still choosing violence, okay? We have no astrology of note for this day, so let us scooch our little heinies, or our big heinies. It's me. And it's some of you listening too. I know there's some dump trucks out there. I know it. I love it. That is totally unrelated to what we were about to talk about, though. Here is me alone in my house going nuts. Okay. Our one and only holy day that we have is the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe from our Catholic friends and ancestors. I know I'm starting this out with a lot of reverence. All apologies. Our Lady of Guadalupe, in Spanish, her name is Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. She is also known as the Virgin of Guadalupe. This is a Catholic title of Mary, who is, of course, the mother of Jesus. About to be a big deal here, December 25th. Don't know. We'll get into it in the class if you're not familiar. And she is associated with a series of Marian apparitions that happened in December of 1531, so several hundred years ago, as well as a venerated image of her on a cloak that is enshrined within the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. Now, interestingly, I think, this basilica is the most visited Catholic shrine in the world, and the world's third most visited sacred site. So, this, I think, is very, very interesting because, of course, Guadalupe is connected to the mother of the world and the mother of all the gods. When we go back into deep the indigenous belief systems of Latin America, of Mexico, Honduras, these other countries, like, all of these places were worshiping a great mother goddess who gives birth to a lot of the gods and some of the most important gods at winter solstice. Absolutely connected to Guadalupe. Really cool stuff. All right. That's all that we have for December 12th. So let us move on to December 13th. All right. December 13th, we still have our waxing moon in Aries, and so we are still waking up and choosing violence, or not, right? Maybe you're cleaning your house vigorously. I don't know. Enjoy the moon in Aries if you can. But we have some other astrology to talk about on this day. Just little things, little tiny things, no big deal. Just Mars enters Sagittarius. I just want to say, before I continue, to my close friends and the people who hang out with me on a regular basis, I apologize in advance. I probably didn't mean it, but you probably needed to hear it. Mars is moving into Sagittarius for everybody. That is fantastic. Mars, of course, loves hanging out in Sagittarius. It's a fire sign. Sagittarius is like, yes, let's see how far we can go. Mars is like, how fast can we get there? And so Mars in Sagittarius is aspirational. It's enterprising. It's idealistic. We tend to be a little bit more positive and a little bit more competitive. And so wherever Sagittarius is in your chart, expect kind of a universal boot in the ass. Mars really is sort of like in fire under the butt, fuel in the gas tank kind of engine, prepping, engine revving, engine plowing sort of energy. If Mars in Sag is difficult to work with, it can be that we totally think that we can take on way, way, way too much stuff. We do take on too much stuff, and we tend to kind of like exhaust ourselves. We can take on a real crusader type of energy, and that can become a bit fanatical, right? We don't need any more of that in the fucking world. And we can really exaggerate stuff. Goddess bless. I love to exaggerate. That's a hobby of mine. But That can be really fun if we're being obvious about the fact that we're exaggerating and we're using it for theatrical effect. That's fun. That's cool. But if we're constantly bullshitting people, if we're constantly talking out of our butthole, if we're constantly stretching the truth and making things out to be way bigger, way hotter, way faster, way more, way angrier, way worse than what it actually is, people get exhausted by that. They get tired of listening to it. So just listen to yourself, be aware, and also be aware that other people over the next month or so may have a tendency to blow things up a little bigger than what they actually are. Also, on this day, Mercury is entering Capricorn. Okay, so same thing. Wherever Capricorn is in your chart, Mercury is headed there. So for all of us, our mercurial energies, Mercury is the planet of what? Communications, and that's verbal communication, written communication, so texts, emails, networking, commerce as well, right? So that's also, an interesting thing coming up with the holiday season that encourages consumption. Encourages is the diplomatic way of putting it. If you don't live in America, you don't understand the pressure that there is to buy fucking everything and give it to someone at Christmas. So it's a lot. And so Mercury moving to Capricorn here actually is a real blessing because our thinking becomes much more practical. It's much more future oriented in the sense of how am I building my future? Like what am I building? We become a lot more realistic. We are a lot more precise. We're more focused. We're more orderly. We're more logical. And so we're more practical, more grounded. And so I think that could bring a really cool tendency. If you are a gift giver at Christmas time or winter time, holiday situation, whatever, I don't mean to shit on you. That's lovely that you do that. I'm just saying that it's kind of an enforced thing in American culture. It's like, you better do it or else. But some people genuinely enjoy doing it. Some people absolutely enjoy participating in that process. And that is cool. I would encourage you to allow this Mercury transit to bring you into a more practical place, not just in terms of like, what are you spending and all of that stuff, but also like giving people things that are practical, giving people things that are really going to be useful to them, that maybe aren't shiny, maybe aren't fancy, maybe isn't the most expensive thing in the world or the flashiest thing in the world, but it's something that's going to help them in their private life, something that's going to help them in their day-to-day life or behind the scenes. It's kind of the difference between like, I bought you a gem encrusted sweater, cute, love it, versus I bought you new underwear and socks because you need them, right? But we're in a private way, like in a behind the scenes way, doing something very, very practical and grounded and down to earth that really is improving lives. All right, that's what I have to say about Mercury entering Capricorn. Go buy underwear and socks for everybody. Or like, bake food and give it to people, or make things and give it to people, or check in with them and ask them, what do you need? Would you like $100 gift certificate to your, usual grocery store? Would that be useful to you? That kind of stuff. Actually, I'm not done talking about this. Yeah, I got more to say. Here's what's up. This is really about us being super fucking real with each other about where we are in our lives and where we are in this world with all of the stuff that's around us. It might feel wildly embarrassing to have to look at your friend and say, I don't want you to take me out for $100 dinner. I need that $100 for my groceries. But it's about the realest fucking thing you could possibly say to them too. And imagine what happens when you allow yourself to be real and vulnerable with your people in that way. When you say, I need this help. I actually need this help. Would I prefer a $100 sushi dinner? Absolutely, I would. And moreover, I would prefer to be living a life where I can totally fucking have a $100 sushi dinner and it doesn't matter. I'm not even phased. I don't even have to blink and think about it. That's what I would really prefer, right? I prefer for all of my stuff to be taken care of enough that a $100 sushi dinner isn't tripping me out. But that's not the world that a lot of us are living in right now. A lot of us are counting our pennies right now. A lot of us are being very conservative about how we think about things. And I want to extend that to even this type of stuff. If we can splurge, let's splurge. If we can put some glitter on it, if we can have some silly shit, absolutely. But also, let your ego go and ask for what you actually need from the people who are saying, can I give you something? And those of us who are out there giving, really listen to the people that are receiving your gifts and make sure that you're giving something that they need, not that you want to give. That's the practicality of Mercury in Capricorn. That's what's up. Mwah. All right, let's move on. Very, very briefly, I have 2 holy days. I'm just going to say them super quick because I don't have much to say about them. I'm going to keep them all in this same little moment. One, we have a feast for Saint Lucina / Saint Lucy. This is for our pagan and Catholic friends and ancestors. We talked about Saint Lucy or Saint Lucia last week. She's a really cool saint. She's got a lot of really interesting symbolism with her. She has her festival day in Italy specifically was last week, and around the rest of the world for pagans and Catholics this week. Go back and listen to the podcast for Lunar Week 41 if you would like to know more about that saint. She's got some really cool ties to the stuff that we're working with right now. Also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Lux Mundi. Now, the phrase Lux Mundi means the light of the world. And this is the phrase that Jesus referred to himself and his disciples as. No problem, super humble, right? Very chill. Like, I'm just the light of the world, no big deal. I actually love that. I think more of us maybe should be thinking of ourselves in that way, actually. But this is a Roman holiday celebrating the sun and the power of the sun and the light of the world, literally. All right, let us move on to December 14th. December 14th, we find ourselves facing a gibbous moon in Taurus at 8 degrees. 4:40 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet, / December 15th morning hours for some folks. This moon is really encouraging us to seek the balance that includes nature, but makes room for our efforts. AKA, in other words, we are focusing on taking full responsibility for what we own and all of the work that entails. But we are also thinking about, what does it mean to balance the needs of the land against the desires and the needs of human beings? And again, right, we talked about this last week and the week before. I'm going to probably talk about it all through this gift-giving holiday season. What are the resources that are being called up to create those things that you are purchasing? What are the resources that are, extracted from the world so that you can give your nephew a $5, radio to have in their room or whatever, right? It's that kind of stuff. Is it really necessary? Of course, there's stuff that we need to survive. I'm not talking about that. But sometimes we are even talking about that, right? Because sometimes that's the place where we have to actually ask ourselves, do I actually need this to survive specifically? Are all of those words accurate in that sentence? Do I need this? Do I need this 15th pair of shoes, right? Or do I want them, right? And we can always justify it. And those are those moments where we have to stand back and go, do I need to call myself out on my bullshit? Or am I actually being correct here? Am I actually I actually need this thing and we need to figure it out. So, humans need food. We know that, right? Humans need shelter. Humans need clothing. Humans need clean water. We know those things. I think that this urge to secure our stuff gets thwarted and warped into us getting real freaked out about our Nikes or our Jordans or our, our Switch, our Nintendo Switch or our Xbox or our stuff, right? We're like, man, my stuff, my stuff. And what we don't get freaked out about is, the water quality of Flint, Michigan, right? You get me? You hear what I'm saying, right? Like, that thing that we are super worked up about and like, hey, don't touch my stuff and I want to be protective of my stuff. Why don't we have that same feeling for Mother Earth? Anybody? That's what I'm talking about. And so this moon is really asking us to come into that conversation and to come into that part of the conversation. Where am I justifying this stuff to myself? And I'm actually making it worse, or at the very least, maintaining the status quo, which ain't great. And where do I want to be in that conversation? Where would I actually like to be? Where would I like to see that conversation and this movement go to? If we're going to get all worked up about this, can we get all worked up about that? Is that possible? Okay. While we are working with this gibbous moon in Taurus for our lunar body, we are awakening, activating, stimulating, adorning, and nourishing for action our speech and hearing organs and processes. So our mouth, our teeth, our ears, our neck, but our capacity to hear, our capacity to speak, our throat, all of those things, nourishing, activating, adorning. Maybe you're just going to wear some dope earrings for the next couple of days. That might be all it looks like. For our plant body work, we are planting, transplanting, and grafting for above ground growth. We have no astrology of note for this day, but we do have a few holy days. So let's get right into it. First off, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Ras al-Hag, which means the head of the serpent collector. That is, of course, the constellation Ophiuchi or Ophiuchus, who we have been talking about for the last couple of weeks, the snake charmer or the snake handler. And we have talked about the metaphor of this constellation for a few weeks and the snake in particular. Being sort of the poison and the medicine at the same time. And so the implication is that this doctor, the snake charmer, the snake handler, is not actually fighting with the creature, but actually has control over it. And since this is the head star, the note is one of control by the mind, not by the brute strength that is so often evident in the illustrations of this constellation. So this is really speaking to this idea of, when we perceive it a certain way, when we decide that things are a certain way, if we choose to, conform the mind to think about a thing in a certain way, we can really tap into the power and the medicine that is held within it. I really love the definitions and the magical esoteric meanings behind these fixed stars. It's just potent stuff. And that's so much of what we're doing here in Samhain season, is understanding the poison is the medicine. The dark heart of the thing is the point where the light is also going to come out. There is something that I say in all of the Samhain classes, which is, if there are devils to be met on the Underworld Journey, they surely will come from your own heart. And what I mean by that is this. There's fucked up stuff in the world. I don't have to tell you that. You know. But that stuff is out there, right? I can do some things about it, but I can't do stuff about some of it, right? There's that horror that's out there. But the things that are truly going to plague me through my life, the things that are really going to haunt me, especially, it's a pretty particular word to use here too, are going to come from inside of me. They're going to be the things I can't let go of. They're going to be the things I can't forgive myself for. They're going to be the things that I always am shameful about, that I always feel guilty around. Things that I feel that I shouldn't be or shouldn't do or shouldn't have, and those become the demons or the devils that come for us in the work that we do in the Underworld Journey through Samhain, through Yule season, into Imbolc season, because the Underworld Journey takes a minute. This is not a one and done. The dark half of the year is dark. And as we walk through that dark, phantoms come to us out of the dark. And those phantoms are usually created from within our own hearts, within our own minds, within our own soul, within our own psychology. Because nothing in the world, generally speaking, is as horrific as the things that I can imagine, the things that I can come up with. And truly all of the horror that is in our world, the potential for that is within all of us. It's a choice to act that way or to not act that way by all genders. I don't want to hear any of that. Women are more kind or more loving than men are. No. We all have the capacity to be really awful people. We all, therefore, have the capacity to be really incredible people too. And choosing to witness and get real with yourself about what is actually in you, what's been put in you, what you have stored in yourself, what you have, what's been told to you about you, all of those things that feel like burdens, that feel like gnarl, gross, icky stuff, like that's the stuff that's coming back to us during this season. And we have to learn how to love it and how to acknowledge it and how to let it say its truth and how to not let it run the show all at the same time. I'm scared of this and this and this, and so I act in this really selfish way. But really, I feel bad about the fact that I act in this way, but I'm justified in doing it. It doesn't matter even if I have that conversation where I'm justified in doing this, underneath that is, but I still feel bad about doing it. Right. And this is a very subjective trip too. So that's another thing, another layer of this that can get weird, that can get funky, what have you, is a thing that truly bothers me may truly not bother another person. And we have to also find peace with that. That, some sort of an incident may really rock me, and, my friend is really not bothered by it at all. And we both kind of have to make room for each other to have that reaction. So we get asked to do a lot of this really heavy work. And why I encourage it as much as I always say, as is healthy and safe for you to engage this stuff, is because the poison is the medicine. The poison is the medicine. So as much as we can bring ourselves to come and face these demons, it often just turns out that these devils want to sit down and speak their piece over a nice cup of rooibos tea. And then they're on their way. They dissipate. They just disintegrate into the universe. And, it's pretty cool. It's harrowing. Sorry. I mean, it's cool. It's also horrifying. So the poison is the medicine. Okay, let's go on with the rest of the holy days of wherever we are. December 14th. Where are we in space and time? All right, also on this day, we have the Festival of Lights for Goddesses of Light and Fire from our friends and ancestors in Tibet. And this festival is literally what I just said. It's a festival of lights for goddesses of light and fire. I don't have a lot more information about this. I do believe that this is connected to a series of events that happen at this time of year that are all around winter solstice and are a part of some of the New Year's ceremonies that we see in some parts of Tibet happening in December. What I can also say about this is at this time of year, leading up to, on, and just after winter solstice, we are going to see a whole cluster of holy days and festivals dedicated to goddesses, gods, archetypes, heroes, heroines, and other divine characters that are all about the sun, light, fire, brightness, all of that type of symbolism, the hearth, all of those things. So here is one of many that we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks. Also on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Aganalia for indiges. Now, an Aganalia was an obscure, archaic religious observance celebrated in ancient Rome several times a year in honor of various divinities. So there's a whole bunch of different Aganalias to a variety of gods and goddesses and other heroes and heroines. Now, indiges may have been a hero who was deified as Jupiter indiges. That's some sources say that's what was happening. Other sources say that this was just Jupiter indiges, not a person that had been raised up to the place of being divine. Other people say the word indiges specifically means indigenous or connects to the idea or the word indigenous, and that this was an aganalia for the locus genii or the genii locus, the spirit of the place, the indigenous deity or deities of the place. Again, this is about all the information that I have for this, so I'm not super certain, maybe it's a mix of all of these things. But what I think is interesting in that symbolism is the idea of humanity being raised to a state of divinity and the connection between the mundane and the divine, which is absolutely something that we see stressed within Sagittarius symbolism and the tarot card that is connected to Sagittarius temperance. This connection between the mundane and the divine. So having a holiday here that even remotely speaks to that idea, I just think is cool. Maybe I'm reaching. I totally admit that. But probably not, because I'm pretty cool. Also on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have Septimontium. The Septimontium was a proto-urban festival celebrated in ancient Rome by the Montani. Yeah, Montani. Residents of the seven or sept communities associated with the hills or the peaks of Rome. So the seven hills of Rome, and there are many cities around the world that have seven hills. Seattle is one of them. And so these were festivals that were held by the families that sort of lived at the tops of these hills. Again, this is another festival that we don't have a lot of information about, but I do know that, interesting, no horse-drawn vehicles were allowed during the Septimontium. And I think that's interesting because, again, we're in Sagittarius season, the season of the centaur, half human, half horse. Interesting stuff. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, as we like to say here on the podcast. All right, let's move on to December 15th. All right, it's December 15th. It's my birthday, so, that whole thing about Sagittarius is best, I kind of know that from personal, lived experience, so, don't argue. Okay. All right, December 15th, we still have our gibbous moon hanging out in Taurus, so we are still doing that Taurian work of asking, what does my life cost the planet? My lifestyle, what does it cost the planet? What does it cost my community? It's tough work, but it's necessary work. Keep doing it. Okay. Also on this day, we have Mars in Sagittarius hanging out with the nodes in the very last degree, or first, I guess I should say, degree of Gemini and Sagittarius. So it's Mars in Sagittarius conjunct the South Node, opposing the North Node. And this can manifest as tension from the past coming back up to the surface to be reviewed, dealt with, wow, I thought we put this argument to bed. I guess not. But it also could look like reflecting on how you dealt with anger in the past and how that has changed or how that hasn't changed. Using this fire also heading towards higher goals. What am I trying to say here? This could be a day for reflecting on anger issues or anger management or how you have dealt with your own fury, anger, rage, that type of stuff in the past, or how you haven't dealt with it. It could look like that, but it could also be a day where you really move into channeling this energy towards your higher goals. And in fact, it is a fantastic use of the energy, channeling this anger, your rage, your fury, which we started out the week talking about, right? With Mars and Aries, or excuse me, with the moon in Aries. We've gotten in touch with the stuff that we're angry about. We know what we're mad about. And now this is an opportunity to transmute that anger into rocket fuel that shoots us towards our goals, versus what might be really tempting on this day, but we don't necessarily want to engage in this behavior, is using this fuel to go for petty short-term victories, which are fun, obvious, usually, and really entertaining, but oftentimes actually make the situation worse, right? So just, this is another day. I'm encouraging you to sit with yourself, be with your anger, be with your fussiness. You are always allowed to put yourself in timeout. You are always allowed to go take a walk around the block. You are always allowed to say, hey, I can't make a decision about this right now. Can I hit you up tomorrow? You're always allowed to say that. You're always allowed. So use your get out of asshole free card. Heavily encouraged on this day. That's really all I have to talk about the moon and the astrology. So let's go right into the holy days. From our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the country Dionysia. So the Dionysia are these 4 big holidays / festivals. Some of them were on a single day, some of them were multi-day, that are a part of a big Dionysian holiday cycle. And the 4 Dionysian holidays, the Dionysias, all take place really close to the solstices and the equinoxes. And, given that Dionysus was very much about the earth and the harvest and grapevines and, growing fruits and veggies and the natural world that was producing all of these, foods for us, all these crops for us, it really makes sense to me that there would be an acknowledgement of Dionysus in his 4 forms as he moves through the 4 seasons of the year. This also was a holiday that was celebrated outside of the city and inside of the city. And you'll find some records refer to the city Dionysias as the greater and the country Dionysies as the lesser. But I think of them as the rustic versus the city, or the country versus the city, because they both had their own flavor. And some sources say that they were totally separate, but other sources say that people kind of wove back and forth. And sometimes they would celebrate the ones in the city, and then they would go out to the country and celebrate there. And then the folks in the country would come into the city, and back and forth. So, those Greeks, whatever they could do to justify drinking another glass of wine, God us bless. Okay, also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Consuela. The Consuelia festival was held twice a year. This was in August 21st and also December 15th. This is a festival with games in honor of Consus, the god of secret deliberations, or Neptunus Equestris. Now, some sources say that Neptunus Equestris and Consus are actually the same deity. Some people say no, they were different. We talked about Consus earlier in the year. Of course, we just talked about Poseidon. So now that we have a holiday to Neptune, duh, right? That makes sense to us. But what I think is interesting is that it's the equestrus, so it's connected to horses. Hello, Sagittarius imagery again. Now, let us remember also that Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, we know of and the modern day as the ruler of Sagittarius, but Jupiter is the ancient ruler of Pisces, the sign of Pisces. The modern astrological ruler of Pisces is the planet Neptune. So there's a very interesting thing connecting all of that stuff together here at the same time of year. I don't know. It's bizarre and cool to me. This ritual was actually pretty solemn. There was a circus, but there was this symbolic ceremony of uncovering an altar dedicated to this god that was normally buried in the earth. There was games, but horses and mules were not allowed to do any work and instead were adorned with garlands of flowers and just like fed a lot and, enjoy not having a saddle on your back. Don't we all? All right, let's move on to December 16th. Okay, December 16th, we find our waxing moon entering Gemini at 12:42 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet. This is officially our pre-funk for the full moon. It begins. It begins. So here we go. All right. I'm just going to say this straight out. I think this is a really great moon for a social media diet, honestly. This phase of the moon with Gemini really brings us into a moment of examining where we need to properly edit our communication. Now, this is not about censorship so much as it is about understanding the power of a rough draft and a good edit. You get me? I'm not saying you can't say it. I'm saying, should you? Do you need to? Does everybody have to hear that? Like asking yourself, what is your goal in communicating whatever it is that you're trying to communicate? And for example, if you have social media accounts, which I'm going to guess most of you do, I know that there are some folks that don't fuck with social media, but they're few and far between. And most of us have some kind of social media accounts. What are you doing with it? Are you doing anything with it? If not, great. Congratulations. But if you are a person that thinks that you have something really important to say, why are you saying it through social media? Why not say it on your own platform? Start a podcast, start a blog, start a website, start a newsletter. Don't rely on these crap ass platforms, that are just making money off of every click to be the people that propagate your message. Like, you propagate your own message. But this is also a great time to ask yourself, do I really have something important to say? Do I have something to say that people really need to hear? Maybe yes, maybe no. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay if we don't put every single moment of our fucking lives on social media. It's okay. So in this moment, ask yourself, what is my goal in communicating whatever it is that I'm trying to communicate? Who is my audience? Who am I telling this to? And then there are those of us who are out there on social media. We kind of have to be. We are creating the content. But we're doing stuff, and we do rely on social media to one extent or another to get our message across or to amplify the thing that we're already doing somewhere else. And so for those of you out here that qualifies or counts for, again, ask yourself, who is your audience and what is the best way to get your point across to those people? And is there anything that you can prune? So I really want you to think about those days leading up to the full moon. Maybe that's a good time for you to take a social media diet. Maybe it isn't, whatever. But what are you saying? And can you be more concise in what you're saying? Do you need a rough draft? Do you need a good edit on what you're putting out there? Okay. When we are working with this waxing moon in Gemini for our lunar body, we are nourishing, stimulating, adorning, awakening, and activating for action our shoulders, our elbows, our wrists, our hands, and our arms in total. Those are the parts of the body ruled by Gemini. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting, we are doing pest and disease control and maintenance, and we are plowing or weeding if we have outdoor spaces to hang out with plant life and nature, etc. Okay, we have no astrology of note for this day, so that's everything that's going on with the moon. The real beef is going to be coming, a couple days later when we step into the full moon with Gemini, but for now, we're just in the pre-funk, so enjoy. Let us move on to the holy days of December 16th. Just a quick reminder, wow, wow, wow. The Wheel of the Year class for Yule, winter solstice, the long night, is December 16th, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet. This will be live on my YouTube channel as a live stream. Please join us in chat, ask questions, heckle me if you like, if you think you can get me. You'll also be able to watch through my website. You won't be able to comment in chat through my website, though. But if you would like access to the video later on, it will be up for free on my website because I'm just that kind of gal. But if you would like super dope, ultra sick, fat, ridic, excellent, righteous, tubular access to the workbook that I will be referring to heavily in the class, please join my Patreon. Folks that are registered for Patreon at the Venus level, which is $9 and higher, have access to the Patreon Dropbox, which has the workbook that we'll be referring to throughout the class. It has recipes, it has slides from the class, and other visual references that I often don't end up including in the class. It has an 8-week calendar for the season of Yule and winter solstice, which contains hundreds of holidays that we talk about every week here on the podcast, and more. Plus my undying love and devotion. Whatever, it's fine. That part comes cheap. But join us at Patreon for even more blah, 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 / Yule class Thursday night. Be there and be square. I really enjoy angles. Okay. The rest of the holy days for this day, December 16th, starting with the heliacal rising of the fixed star Lesath. Now, the traditional name comes from the Arabic word las'a, which means to pass or the bite of a poisonous animal. So like the passing of it took a pass at you. However, this is actually a mistranslation for the earlier word alasha, which comes from the Arabic al-lathka, which means the foggy patch. And that is referring to the nearby open cluster M7, which is a cluster of stars nearby. So this is also called the cat's eyes. And that's all I got to say about that. So let's move on. Also on this day, for those of us who work with Vedic or sidereal astrology, we have the sun entering Sagittarius. Yes, for those of us in Western astrology, sun has been in Sagittarius for the last 3 weeks. And now for the rest of the world, the sun is in Sagittarius because that's what's actually happening in the sky. Okay. Also on this day, we have running from December 16th to December 25th. So from now until Christ Mass or Christmas, we have the holiday Las Posadas from our Catholic friends and ancestors. Las Posadas is a novenario, which is an extended devotional prayer, meaning this is happening for 9 days. Las Posadas derives from the Spanish word posada, which means lodging or accommodations, which in this case refers to the inn from the nativity story. It uses the plural form as the celebration lasts for a 9-day interval called the novena during the Christmas season, which represents the 9-month pregnancy of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Again, if you're not familiar, we're going to talk about it a lot in the class. Jesus is how you pronounce it. Okay. This is really big. It's a huge deal. In Mexico, the Winter Solstice Festival was one of the most important celebrations of the year. It came on December 12th, according to the Julian calendar used by the Spanish until 1582. So who knows if that's actually accurate or not. But according to the Aztec calendar, Tonantzin Guadalupe, the mother of the gods. Oh, wait, didn't we just talk about Guadalupe? Didn't we just talk about the mother of the gods? What? Huh? What? Oh, what? Was celebrated on the winter solstice, and she still is And she is still feted on December 12th, as we talked about, under the name Guadalupe, while their most important deity, the sun god Huitzilopochtli, was born during the month of December as well. So, doesn't that sound familiar? Isn't that interesting? We're actually, again, we'll talk about it more in the Yule class, but we're going to see a whole lot of that same symbolism around this time of year. A whole lot. Okay. Also on this day, we have from our Hindu friends and ancestors, Danu Sankranti, which means the sun is moving into Sagittarius. So this is a big or small festival. It's a regional thing. Some regions really care. Some regions don't care so much. But Danu equals what we would call Sagittarius. Sankranti literally means the sun is moving into a sign. The sun is moving into this next sector of the sky. Also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the holy day or festival of Sapientia. I have literally no information about this at all other than just there is a documentation of this. But that word, Sapientia or Sapientia, directly relates back to the goddess archetype Sophia. So this is a day that is absolutely about Sophic wisdom, wisdom deity of some kind, thought and wisdom, right? We've talked about that archetype a lot here in Samhain season, that the goddess is slowly turning into the crone. She's leaving her mother form, or they are leaving their mother form and turning into the crone. And in that, they become sort of the embodiment of wisdom and enlightenment, and all of that stuff. All right. Also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Tellus and the associated Lectis Ternium for Ceres, the goddess Ceres. Now, the Lectis Ternium was an ancient Roman propitiatory ceremony consisting of a meal offered to gods and goddesses. The word derives from lectum sternare, or to spread or drape a couch. And so the deities were represented by their busts or their statues or by portable figures made out of wood. Maybe they were, made from bronze or wax or marble or whatever. And they were covered in a drape and set out on a couch. And then there would be this party held for them. And so they basically were there on the couch hanging out in their statue form while everybody else had this party. Okay, cool. So, who is this party for? It is for the goddess Tellus, or Tellus Mater, or Terra Mater, Mother Earth, and the goddess Ceres, the goddess of grain and crops and harvest and production. So again, here we have another holiday at this time of year, right? At the very, very, very end of fall, very super close to winter solstice, acknowledging the power and the fecundity of the natural world, even as it is lying dormant, even as it is going dark here at winter season, right? Again, for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the time of year that nature tends to do the least, right? Like to chill out after the giganto harvest that we had over the last couple of months. And then slowly, in January and February, we start to see some light come back and some stuff starts to thaw. And then eventually in spring, we get to start to grow stuff again, et cetera, et cetera. So again, here in winter, the heart of the very end of fall, beginning of winter, we're seeing this acknowledgement of these natural law embodiment of the earth and its vegetation recognition happening at this time. Cool stuff. All right, that brings us to December 17th. All right, that brings us to December 17th, which is the last day of our lunar week. We still have our waxing moon hanging out in Gemini, so we're still, censoring. No, we're still editing. We're still looking at stuff that we can take out of our communication. What do we need less of? What do we not need more of? That thing. We also have no astrology of note for December 17th, so let us move directly on to the holy days. And that brings us to running from December 17th to the 25th, the Ursids meteor showers. They actually peak on the solstice this year, which is really cool, except that we have a full moon on the 18th. So not an ideal time for shooting star watch. But if you're lucky, depending on where you are around the planet, the Ursids appear to come directly from the constellation Ursa Minor. In America, we call that the Little Dipper. And so depending on where you are around the planet, depending on where the sun is, depending on where the moon is, you might be able to get a couple of hours at the beginning of the night or the end of the night and see this constellation to be able to see some shooting stars. But while the moon is up, it's going to be really bright and it may wash out the majority of the stars. Oh well, maybe next year. That brings us also to the next holiday, dun 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 dun, running from December 17th to the 23rd from our Roman ancestors and our modern pagan friends. We have Saturnalia. Now, this is another holiday that we are going to talk about more in the class, so be there, be square, as I mentioned. But Saturnalia is an ancient Roman festival and holiday in honor of the god Saturn, held on December 17th of the Julian calendar, later expanded with festivities through to 23 December. The holiday was celebrated with a sacrifice at the Temple of Saturn in the Roman Forum and a public banquet, followed by gift giving and partying, etc., etc., etc. Again, we're going to talk about this more, but this was a huge holiday. Now, why I say modern pagan is because the way that we have our Roman holidays set up in this calendar that I am presenting to you is aligned with the moon, which ancient Rome did because it was copying Greece, basically. But at some point, Rome decided that the year began, well, Rome had 3 calendars, but one of the calendars, they decided we're not messing with the moon anymore. January 1st is January 1st. We don't care what day of the week it is. I don't care where the moon is at. January 1st, January 1st. So in modern pagan / Roman work, celebrating Saturnalia literally from December 17th through the 23rd is super appropriate, and or waiting, sometimes it's going to be before, sometimes it's going to be after, depending on our lunar phases, but waiting until the 17th day of the moon of this month is also appropriate timing for celebrating Saturnalia. But there is something about this very much tied to the winter solstice. So I'll say that as well about it. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about it, though. You have to go to the class to hear the rest, God damn it. Okay. Also, on this day from our Yoruba friends and ancestors, we have the feast of Babalú-Ayé. This is the Orisha of healing in all of its aspects. Healing of the land, healing of people. This is the Orisha of respect for the elderly. And this Orisha is the protector of health. He is called wherever necessary to prevent infirmity. Now, he promotes the cure for illnesses, but he is always thought of as being close to the Orisha Aiku, which is the Orisha responsible for taking life. And because he promotes healing for those who are close to death. However, some fear Babalú-Ayé because he is believed to bring disease upon humans, including smallpox, in which he is known as Sapona. So there's that. Put your goddamn masks on and wash your hands. That's all I'm going to say about that. How about that? Last but not least, for this day, we have a day dedicated to Father Black Hawk, who was a warrior and a leader of the Sauk Native Americans here in America. There is a biography about him. There's a book published about him where he recounts his tales of coming into his place of power and how he came into his position of responsibility. It's a pretty interesting read. All right, that is the end of our lunar week. Let's get into the wrap up. All right, for the lunar week of whatever to whatever we just talked about. What is it? The 10th to the 17th? I don't really understand time and space anymore. I gotta be honest. Just seriously, shit's been fucked up since David Bowie died. I know some of you are sick of hearing me say it, but I'm right. Okay? Nothing makes sense anymore. Okay. Anyways, so the wrap up for this week, we are moving from Pisces to Gemini in our lunar phases. So we are continuing to hang out with that transitional energy of our mutable signs here and the very waning hours and days of fall, right? We're moving into that transitional energy of transitioning out of fall and transitioning into the winter season, winter vibes, winter energy, all of that good stuff. For our astrology this week, what the heck do we have going on? We have Venus in Capricorn conjunct Pluto in Capricorn at 25 degrees on December 11th. Same day, Mercury in Sagittarius sextile Jupiter in Aquarius at 26 degrees. And same day, Sun in Sagittarius square Neptune in Pisces on the 20th. And then on the 13th, we have Mars moving into Sagittarius and Mercury moving into Capricorn. And then on December 15th, we have Mars in Sagittarius opposing the North Node in Gemini / conjunct the South Node in Sagittarius at 1 degree for both of those. Next week, we have a full moon in Gemini. We have the winter solstice. Come to the class, December 16th. We also have next week Venus stationing retrograde and Chiron stationing direct on the same day. I'm sure it's going to be fine. It's no big deal. Everybody calm down, drink some water, relax, breathe, take a walk around the block. It's going to be fine. It might be fucked up. We're going to get through it though. If you have listened this long, if you love the podcast, please support me. Please join my Patreon. Throw me a tip in my tip jar. I so appreciate it. And if you can't financially support me, I fully understand. But please give me a thumbs up. Leave a review. That is a huge thing. When people leave me a review on whatever podcast service it is that you listen to this through, whether it's Spotify or Anchor or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is, leave me a review. It is huge, huge, huge. It's okay if it's a crappy one, but I will find you. I'm kidding. But in whatever way, share with a friend, throw it up on social media. Oh wait, we're taking a social media diet this week. Do it next week. I so appreciate it. Also, class on the 16th, please be there. And as I said before, join my newsletter, join my Patreon, because I've got workshops coming up and they're going to be announced privately first and then in public if there's any seats left. So if you're wanting to get your tarot on, if you're wanting to get your witchcraft on, get on the box. Join me on the... I don't know where that was coming from or where we were going to go with it. So I just decided to end it. All right. That's enough for me and from me. I hope it was enough for you. If not, go back and listen to the other 100 hours of podcasts that I have here. We're going to get through this, but we may get a little banged up, but it's going to be okay. It's just going to be intense, but it's going to be okay. Remember, as I always say, you always can put yourself in timeout. You always can walk away from a situation, take a breath, walk around the block. And also, there is a time to make yourself engage the situation. You have to engage the situation too. So this is a week of standing with a feet in both worlds, right? Or a foot in both worlds, where we are, retreating. We are witnessing, like, where do I need to edit? Where do I need to pull back? But we're also witnessing, where do I need to be really aware of my connection to the physical plane and what that's all about. So, good luck out there, heathens. You got this. You guys are fucking badasses. Blessed be.